Hey there, and welcome back to Green Disruptors Scaling the Future. I'm your host, Megan Kerr. Today, I'm joined by Fahrion, a co-CEO and co-founder of Zeno Renewables. They're a solar company out of Canada that's shaking up the status quo. We talk about our mutual love for the movie Interstellar and about his journey from moving across the world for cleaner air to how Zeno is planting trees with every install. Kai's story is a powerful reminder that values-driven businesses can for sure scale and make a real difference. We talk about the solar trends, community impact, and what it takes to play the long game in a fast-growing industry. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Green Disruptors. Today, I've got Fahrion on with me today, and tell me your title, actually, co-founder?
It's co-CEO at Zeno Renewables.
Okay, awesome. So you guys are up in Canada. Tell us a little bit about you personally and about your company and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, for sure. So I can start a little bit with the company. So Zeno Renewables is actually celebrating our 10 years in business here this month. So pretty excited about that. But yeah, we operate here in a few different markets. So we're nationwide, but our main markets are Alberta and Ontario. And we focus on residential solar, but we also do some aspects of commercial solar as well. And what I mean by that is pretty much solar solutions. So electric vehicle infrastructure, battery solutions, and then the big one is solar panels on roofs. There's lots of roofs here in Canada, just like down in the US, and actually, yeah, and not a lot of usage yet. So it's an asset that most people have on their homes, you would hope. And so, yeah, we kind of try to fill those with solar panels and make it work for people financially and then environmentally as well.
Okay, I have a follow-up question and comment, but before I dive into that, tell me a little bit about your background personally.
Yeah, so my background, I was born in Germany, moved to Canada when I was 6 years old. So I was fairly young, don't remember too much of the move, but it was actually, the move was done by my parents fairly quickly, and it was for health reasons. So my parents,
Interesting.
when I was growing up, I had crazy eczema. And I mean, like, I think I have, 2-3 pictures of myself because I didn't want to take photos.
Aww.
And so I have one that I actually look at every once in a while when I'm having a harder day, just to remind myself of kind of like why I'm doing what I'm doing. But it's, it was really bad. So it was something that kind of hindered me when I was younger. And so my parents tried to do everything. They went to doctors, did all sorts of things. And unfortunately, they pretty much told us that they couldn't directly say it was, but it was a lot to do with pollution in Germany. And so to give a bit of perspective on that for people who don't know the size of Germany, but it's about half the size of Alberta, so the province I currently live in, and it's about 90 to 100 million people. So a lot of people in a small area. And so pretty much the doctor told us that Canada was a great option, great environment, good air, clean, fresh air, or New Zealand, Australia side of things. And so my parents had been to Canada before, and so they said, you know what, Canada it is. And within, I think it was about, don't want to get this wrong, I think it's about 7 or 8 months after this was kind of brought to my parents' attention, we were living in Calgary, Alberta. They picked up everything and moved our family here, and I made a lot of big sacrifices to do that, but that kind of led me through my life here in Canada, and I was able to kind of go through the system here. And then after high school, I kind of went on that path of what do I want to do with my life, and I'd always kind of known that I wanted to do something bigger. I didn't know exactly that moment what that was, but I knew I wanted to kind of own a business, run something and do something with my hands, so more hands-on types of thing. And so from that, I went into the electrical trade, which is a 4-year program here in Canada. Mm-hmm. Went through that, worked in all sorts of different parts of the energy sector, so from oil and gas to renewables to residential to commercial and kind of everything in between. And so from that, I realized that I really do like the electrical trade, and I think there's a big impact that can be made. And so I actually met my business partner, Gersh Ball, working in the electrical trade, I think as a 3rd or 4th year. And we kind of both decided, hey, we like the same things. We align on a lot of the same things. And then kind of like the poster behind here, Interstellar poster, but we went and watched this movie, and we kind of realized that, hey, we got to do something for humanity. And so that led us to actually starting the business itself and focusing on sustainable solutions. So it's evolved a lot in the 10 years. It wasn't what it is today, but it was kind of how do we build a business that can offer energy reduction through an electrical side of things, and then also energy production, so from the solar side of things. And so built that kind of business model out. And yeah, that's kind of like a high overview of myself. It's always hard to kind of summarize it all in a few minutes, but
so you don't even need me asking questions. You got this down.
Back 5 steps. Holy cow, your parents. That's amazing that they did that for you. I could be
Yeah,
dramatic and say that your family were climate refugees.
yeah, 100%. I think
Yeah,
they definitely gave up a lot
that's crazy.
for
Did they speak
myself.
English?
They did.
That's
It's
good.
funny, they still have heavy German accents because I think those are hard to get rid of. But I'm lucky enough in the German school system, you actually have to take English throughout. And
That's
so
helps.
they knew English, but it's always funny because it was like proper. I don't know if it's called proper English, but it's almost like there were certain words that made no sense when they came here. So I have a funny story. I remember my dad when I was in elementary, we went to Banff, which is like an area
Mhm.
near Calgary here, and a lot of nature and wildlife. And we came in the Monday morning, and my dad says to the teacher, "We had a great time in Banff. We saw a lot of beers." And the teacher was like, "Beers? Like you guys just went out there to drink?" And my dad's like, "No, like the beers, like the animal." And so she's like, "Oh, bears." And so it was a pretty it was a funny experience. But no, they learned fairly quickly, and we're kind of had to adjust a lot of their lifestyle. But for now, they love it here, and I
That's
think
good.
they definitely wouldn't go back. So
Well, that's so I saw your Interstellar poster before we pushed record, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's my favorite movie. And if you're listening to this podcast and haven't seen Interstellar, I don't think that's going to happen because we're all in this climate space. So you've probably seen it, and it's probably also your favorite movie. But I think that's pretty profound. That probably had an extra impact on you because of what happened when you were a kid. So, whew, anyway, so that's pretty exciting.
yeah, I think just quickly on the Interstellar movie, I think there's this scene where Matthew McConaughey pretty much says it's not possible, but it's necessary, right? And I think that was we actually wanted to name the company Endurance. Now that I
Mhm.
look back, I'm kind of glad that it was taken in our space here in Alberta because I like Zeno better with kind of the meaning behind everything. But overall, yeah, it was the movie had such a great impact, and then even some portions are actually filmed just 3 hours south of where I currently live. So
I
pretty
didn't
cool.
know that. That's amazing.
In kind of like there's a lot of it's like windy flats kind of part of Alberta. So yeah, it's pretty cool that it was filmed there.
That is cool. So, give me kind of a picture of what the solar landscape is like right now compared to maybe a decade ago when you started.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's changed a lot, and I think that's also why our business model has slightly adjusted, like most businesses do. So, when we first started, solar was still a very nice to have. It was a lot of people that, hey, I care about the environment. I really don't care about the payback. Like there was paybacks, you could see them in like 15 to 20 years, and
So, those
individuals
early
still cared.
adopters were doing it for because they care so much.
Yeah, exactly. They were doing it. There was three main kind of buckets we had. We had the environmental piece, we had for future generations, which kind of ties into the environmental as well. And then we had people that we'll call them doomsdayers, I guess. They were like, hey, we wanna have security, energy security. And then the financial piece wasn't even really on the table most of the time. We
Interesting.
tried to kind of massage it as much as we could, but it was really it didn't make too much sense from that side of things in our market yet. And so the conversations were harder. We had a bit of a harder time, even just in general. Again, not sure how much people know about Alberta, but Alberta's an energy province, and that's energy in all forms. And I think it's actually evolved, and I'll get into that a little bit, but it's evolved dramatically on what people look at for energy. But back when we started, it was very, is solar even a thing? Like we couldn't even really have conversations with people. We would go to networking
Wow.
events, and people would kind of almost be like, haha, funny, like, is that actually what you do for work? So it was,
Crazy.
it was almost like it wasn't part of like the landscape of what people did, and
Yeah.
so made it a little bit harder. But it was kind of also the nice piece because you get to shape an industry, you get to shape the market, you get to kind of influence it in ways that you want, which was always fun, right? It can have its ups and downs, and so from that to now, huge difference. So today, we'll take residential for example. The ROIs make sense. So the return on investment is there. Depending on the market that we operate in between the two, Alberta is about around 7 to 9 year, and then Ontario can be around 9, 10 years. So very, very good. And that's obviously base. That's your average. They can get better based on kind of like roof exposure, things like that, and what
Yeah.
people have on their homes. And then also if they have other electrical loads and based on kind of like the feed-ins and different kind of market things that happen. But overall, now the conversations are okay. Environmentally, it makes sense. I already get that. We do have some people that don't care about that, but most people are like, hey, you know what? I get it. It makes sense. And financially, this makes sense for my family. So I think that's the great thing about the conversation today is that people look as, okay, I'll probably stay in my house. More than 7 years is pretty standard in the markets that we're in. And actually in Ontario, it's actually longer based on kind of the data. And then people look at it as also the value of their home. So a lot of the studies here show the increase of the value of the home, which we didn't have that data before because there wasn't enough solar systems. And now it's roughly around 4% for your average home, which is about between $500,000 to $700,000 depending on the market that you're in. And so that's a pretty good return already right there. Plus then obviously the electricity savings and the reduction of the monthly cost. And with today's environment of everything that's going on, a lot of people, monthly cost reduction is so key and people really look for that. So it's amazing that we can get to a point like this. So the market's really day and night what it was 10 years ago. But yeah, so overall it's really good from that side of things. Financially it makes sense and people are kind of thinking about it in a really deep manner for the future, but also money wise.
Yeah, it's funny. We have solar panels and we just purchased a house that already had them. And I'm like, I've always been the climate police, I guess, which is annoying for those who know me. But my husband, he's just like, oh yeah, our energy bill's great this summer. Like that's literally all he thinks about. And I bet that's pretty common among households. It's like maybe there's one person who really cares. But if it doesn't make sense with the bottom line, the other person's like, sorry, you know.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think we get that a lot. Yeah, no, that's pretty common. You'll get, it's funny too, because as you know, then with the apps and like being able to see it, even just the data and people being able to see it and feel it in their hands, like, okay, it actually is tangible today. It's not something where it's like, hey, it's on my roof. Like for an example, would be like a roof, right? You put it on, you really don't know what you spent the money on because whatever, $10,000 for a new roof, you're not going to go look at it. Right. With the solar, it's nice. You can have that data and you have it right there with your electricity bills monthly to be like, okay, I produced this much. Here's my bill. I'm getting credited for this, depending on what market you're in. So yeah, we definitely get that kind of both sides where people will have that one individual that's more climate and one that's more financially, and you can please them both, which is a great place to be.
Yeah, totally. So I guess where are you at right now? It's like it is more affordable now. It's making sense. People are caring more. Just the overall climate, like the culture around it has shifted. So what do those sales conversations look like now? And like, how do you approach going after the jobs?
Yeah, it's a good question. So overall, with obviously an industry growth becomes more competitors and kind of a more aggressive industry as well. And so I think for us, it's really kind of looking at how do we differentiate ourselves from the markets and what can we do for the communities that we operate in. And so a big thing for us is the US is a little bit different because you have more access to different material and stuff like that. But for us, it's pretty standard. If you're a company that's reputable or good at what you do, you're probably using similar products to us. So the product side of things for us is we use the best products that we can get access to for the best price that we can offer our clients. And so that's kind of a given working with us. But one of the big ones that we look at is community. And it's always been something that Gersh and I have really cared about growing up and kind of with the business work, how do we make a bigger impact with it as well? And so for us, it's actually how do the systems make a bigger impact within that? And so one of the big things for us is we plant trees with all of our installs. So every single one of our installs, we work with a company out of BC called Veritree, where they plant verified trees. And there's actually, I think it's Sunrun in the US works with them as well. And that's pretty much just planting trees to offset carbon from kind of our day-to-day operations of the business. And again, that will evolve and get better, but that's kind of what we've started with on that. So that's one of the aspects. And then
so also I ask a question about that before you go on. So is that planting trees like in your local area or is it just worldwide?
So that's a great question. So right now we plant depending on events. So some of the aspects will be like we had some forest fires here in BC. The big ones I think were 2 years ago. I always forget this because we feel like we have way more. So we'll adjust and we'll plant there. But then our main trees would normally be mangroves in Africa is usually what we look at. And they seem to have the best impact per dollar spent based on job creation and then also carbon sequestering. So we could
Right.
look at that as well. The job creation side is very interesting because a dollar goes a lot further there. And so you can actually
Right.
see what that creates for jobs for individuals to plant those trees compared to what it would go when you invest the money here in Canada. So,
Right. Thanks. Yeah. Um, I don't know if you remember what you were going to say before I interrupted you.
no, all good. That's a good tangent to kind of to expand on. But I was looking at the community side. So one of the other aspects is we have a few. So I'll break them down. So sponsoring teams, that's a big one for us, and the one for that is actually aligning with sports teams that align with our values. And what I mean by that is most people, if you have a bit of extra marketing money, you can write a check to a sports team, put your name on their jersey. But for us, does that team actually align with what we're doing? And so a great example, Calgary Surge is one of them. It's a basketball team that's 2 years old, going into year three now, and we're the title sponsor for them. And why we aligned with them is because they impact all four corners of Calgary. They work heavily in the community to make sure that underserved communities can go to basketball games, that they don't just take the normal approach of, hey, we have a professional basketball team, we want to sell tickets, and we need to make money. They really looked at it in a different way on how they actually impact the communities, and so that was something that we aligned with. So that was one of them. And then we also do a marathon, kind of Strides for Sustainability, it's called. And what that is we run marathons yearly, and not everyone has to run the marathon that does it. We give the opportunity to run 5K, 10K, half marathon, and full marathon, and it's to raise money. And so what that has evolved into is it used to be for SAIT and NAIT, which are polytechnics here in Alberta, and we would do a scholarship. And so what that was is it was a Strides for Sustainability, so that it was a sustainability scholarship that we would top up and raise money for through the marathons. And so that one has evolved in that we just sponsor the actual scholarship without the marathon. And so that one, I think we do $5,000 a year to both schools to be able to have individuals that are going to sustainability. They pretty much apply for it.
Yeah.
And then we get to hear their stories on what they're doing with the money and how it's helping their journey into a career, something to do with sustainability. It doesn't have to be solar, just any aspect.
Right.
And what it's evolved into is kids sport. And so the reason we've evolved the charity and the fundraiser into kids sport is because it's Canada-wide. It's an aspect of both of us played sports growing up, and we learned a lot of leadership in sports. We feel that the impact of sports on kids is huge. It's something that a lot of Canadians don't have access to, and so kids sport does a great job of allowing those kids to be able to have access to the sports that they want to play, learning obviously life skills and different aspects that they can then use later in life to make a bigger impact. And so that's why we've transitioned it to the kids sports side of things. And to date, we've raised, I don't want to get this wrong, but we're right around 100,000 between all of our efforts. So we're
Wow.
pretty stoked on that, being able to kind of make that impact there.
Congrats.
And then last but least is the city cleanup. So we do a kind of an organized cleanup that's actually gotten into a pretty big event in our two major cities. And that's pretty much just going to an area, partnering with local companies and doing a cleanup. Pretty much what it sounds like is what it is. We go into areas that people are clean, so to say, and we find garbage, we clean up, we have fun. And a lot of people come out, like some of the ones here in Calgary, 100 to 150 people will come out. Their clients, their partners, their future clients, their community advocates, whatever it might be. They come out, have a great couple hours, and just do good for the community overall. So that one has been in play now. That was the first one that we started. I think that was 7 or 8 years ago. So started pretty early on in the business, and it's just evolved in kind of what it is. So again, that kind of answers your question a little bit, but our kind of different and our big thing is just being able to integrate other pieces, because solar on the roof isn't really the differentiator. It's what are you actually doing above and beyond
It's
to
your
get
relationship with the larger community. And
exactly.
I really can't think of a better way for them to know you than to actually be next to you, picking up garbage with you, showing that you
Exactly.
care about their community. So that's
Yeah, exactly.
bravo on that marketing move. Well,
Thank you.
it's great because it's like it doesn't need to be about marketing. It's about a value that you care about. Like it's not scummy salesy tactics. It's genuine investment in the community.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm always thinking about the numbers side of things because I'm a marketer. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
have you seen it, like ROI on these things in the business since you started employing those strategies?
Yeah, you do. I wouldn't say here like I can't say directly this amount is correlates to these contracts. I think for us it's brand awareness, and again, you're going to be very familiar with this is kind of creating brand awareness and like creating that structure of long-term who are we? Like when you think our big goal with Zeno is to be kind of in quotations the Nike of solar. We want people to, when they hear the word Zeno, we want them to think of not just again solar on their home, solar on their business. It's what does that actually mean, right? It's like what does that encompass, and how do people feel when they're interacting with our brand? And so I wouldn't say I can say, hey, we spent X amount of money and we got this return, but it's been very from feedback and conversations with people. I think it's been very appreciative. People really appreciate that we don't, like you kind of mentioned a few minutes ago there, that we don't do these things to be like, hey, let's get another sale out of it. And like, we're going to push solar on everyone at every single moment. It's, hey, we're here, we do solar, but we're here to do this activation or this thing. And so a lot of people have appreciated that. And we've had a lot of individuals kind of just mention, I was looking at solar and then I saw you at the Surge game, or I saw your name on a van, or I saw your name at a cleanup, or I saw this. And again, it might not have been the direct, hey, that's why I made the decision, but it was like, oh, weird, I've seen that company before. Where was that? Oh, it's something that I actually believe in. Cool. They might be a better choice than X, Y, and Z that I already have quotes from. So it's been a bit of an interesting one. It's always one that I wish I could say, because I'm a numbers guy too. So I'm like, I wish I could say, hey, this is X for X, but it's
4 times our ROI.
Exactly, I think,
Well,
yeah.
but you're playing the long game, and
Exactly.
I think that's interesting because like the actions could be the same, like another company could show up, but like the fact that I feel like you're doing it from the right mindset and like just adding value to the community, so people
Yeah.
can feel that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what, and then long game, that's literally, and it's funny, our goal, our BHAG is 1 million homes by 2040, and we're not even close to that. So the long game for us is definitely what we're playing, is we want to be there for long term for the customer, right? So they can have the experience. And yeah, if they move houses in 10 years, they can come back and we can install it on their new house as well.
Yeah, so that client retention. So what's the current bottleneck? I mean, there's a lot of steps, I'm sure, between now and your goal at 2040. Like what's the next bottleneck you got to solve?
So funny enough, it actually goes back to the early days. So the bottleneck in the early days was education. It was really every single person that I talked to when I mentioned, hey, I do solar, or they would ask, oh, like, does that even make sense? What is it? And you'd have that conversation. You'd have to kind of educate, and it would be almost every person. Now, what I think the bottleneck is that getting to the masses on the real education. There's been some aspects where sometimes some information is thrown around that might not be too true. And I think that has kind of created a little bit of market, not fearfulness, but almost like market where people think a little bit longer about it. Yeah, skepticism. Yeah, it's a good word. And so what I think our big bottleneck is, how do we now unlock more individuals? How do we get, instead of me just having a conversation with a person, unlocking one person, how do you get that person to then be an advocate for their community and to actually be able to speak to the product? And I think it goes back to, I might have mentioned this earlier, is it goes back to like actually them knowing what they're putting on their roof and understanding it and saying, okay, I have this system, this is why I have this size of system, this is what it does for me. I can actually go and tell my neighbors. I don't just tell them I have solar and I don't know why I have it. And so it's unlocking the next stage of kind of, again, expansion of education. That's going to be a lot of work. It comes with, again, the brand being able to kind of build for that longevity so that people know it's been here. And again, because we have a lot of new players in the market, kind of educating on what the benefit is of going with a company like ours that has more of that longevity, that has the customer service, that has the service teams to, if there's issues, because there's always potential to be issues with the system, that you can actually call us and someone will come out and look at it. And so it's a bit of an interesting bottleneck because it's not one that can kind of be solved overnight. It's more of how do we continue to advocate for the industry and show up the best way possible and let people kind of start to churn that as well when they're having conversations with their friends, family, colleagues, whatever it might be. So it's it goes back to the long game comment you said. It's really about building that industry and growing it out, and then yeah.
So besides all the community outreach stuff that you're doing, like what else is your team doing to give?
Yeah, so we have a marketing team that obviously plays with different campaigns, things like that. So doing honestly trying to get very creative on campaigns and being different than other people. Again, not just like the classic banner that's a solar panel that says how much money you can save. Kind of again making it that personal aspect. So working on that. So inbound leads for that side of things, generation. Then we have outbound as well. So being able to work kind of our different teams on the sales side of things. So some of them doing cold outbound reaches to different, whether it's individuals, partners, programs, whatever that looks like. So I think there's a wide variety of things that we currently do. And again, they just take time to kind of click in and grow the industry side of things.
Yeah, and that sounds broader to me, just like a messaging, like you're always honing your messaging. And do you think you have like, because you do commercial and residential, is it a totally different feel for both?
It's a little bit different. Our residential side is fairly, I'm never going to say it's perfect, but it's pretty dialed in, so to say, from like how we approach it, how we do the messaging, and kind of how we show up. The commercial side of things is definitely different because there's also, you're dealing with an individual that's making a decision for a business. And when it's for a business,
Right.
it's very bottom line. Where am I saving money? How am I writing this off from taxes? Where does that all come in? And I think Canada has
They're
some
not
great.
able to make only a value-based decision.
It's very hard unless they have, and this has become almost less actually in the last little while, but unless a company has like mandates, right? Like if corporate, let's say
Right.
corporate, big company, they have mandates for environmental aspects, then that comes into play as well. But a big thing is just incentives. So there's lots of tax credits and things like that here for the commercial space. And so they're not all the same. So it's kind of like,
Yeah,
what does
that's
the business
tricky.
do? And then how do you tailor the assessment to them to maximize their tax credit while also maximizing their return? Again, maximizing what buildings they have and all these different things. So the messaging on the commercial is definitely more tailored, I would say, to the individual case and involves more pieces. Where the residential side is, again, it's a pretty clean 6-step process, we'll
Yeah,
call it,
that,
where, yeah,
that's true in general speaking, B2C
100%.
compared to B2B anyway.
Always, yeah, exactly. Like the client side, most people, again, not everyone's going to fit in one box, and there's going to be things that we adjust for it, but it's a lot easier to make it like a 6-step process where most people fall within that, and we can make minor tweaks. So
Yeah. Well, this has been a fun conversation. We can kind of wrap it up, but is there anything maybe coming up in the next 6 months that you'd like to highlight or that you're excited about?
I'm excited about it. I think we're going into sunny season, so it's always nice coming out of winter season here. I think a lot of people have that kind of that gray air over them. As sunny as Calgary is, I'm excited about going into that and just kind of watching some of our new campaigns unfold more and kind of unlock a different aspect of, again, educating and kind of pushing things forward and allowing us to grow. Other than that, I'm just excited about the industry as a whole. I'm excited to see, we have elections, so we'll see what happens with that at the end of the month.
Best of luck.
And that'll hopefully just create a bit more certainty with
Yeah.
kind of the markets. Because again, as much as when that stuff happens, it creates uncertainty. So that'll be nice. And then, yeah, like I said, the sun will be shining, and we'll be continuing to work towards our goal of 1 million homes by 2040. So
I love that. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been so fun.
awesome, it has. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Green Disruptors. If Kai's story inspired you, share this episode with someone who's working to build a better future. Don't forget to follow the show so you never miss conversations with the leaders driving change in climate and clean tech. Until next time, keep scaling the future.